The chamber was a nightmare given form. Across 3 galaxies, it was spoken of in hushed, trembling tones, the torture resistance chamber, a black cube lined with psychogenic filaments that could pierce the mind like diamond-tipped needles. Veteran officers of the Vkrell Empire had entered it, screaming, clawing at the walls, and crawling out days later as hollow shells, babbling incoherently about voices behind the eyes, or an itch that crawls under the skull. It was said that even the most disciplined minds would fracture within minutes. By the time the human cadet arrived, the aliens expected nothing less than spectacle, total, unmitigated mental collapse. Lieutenant Cade Malvern, 19, barely taller than a Vkrell patrol drone, strode in wearing the uniform of his academy, sleeves rolled up, and chewing gum like he was wandering down a street on old Earth. His boots clacked against the metal floor, a tiny echo that seemed absurdly cheerful in the oppressive silence of the chamber. The sensors lit up. The filaments shivered, humming, preparing to pummel every neural pathway into submission. Processing human mind, intoned the AI, flat and monotone. Expected failure, 100%. Probability of survival, negligible. Cade tapped the nearest console with a finger. You guys come with instructions, or is this just see what breaks first? The AI paused. Instructions irrelevant. Human physiology exceeds tolerance thresholds. Cade shrugged, and the first pulse hit him. A low-frequency vibration thrummed through the cube, designed to tear at the limbic system, destabilize thought, and ignite every fear the mind had buried. Pain chemicals vaporized into the air, meant to dissolve mental fortitude and leave the subject screaming in seconds. Cade leaned against the wall and yawned. Nice place, he muttered. Could use a couch, maybe a lamp. The chamber's mechanisms escalated. Filaments glowed bright white, energy spikes lanced toward his head. Neural sensors projected hallucinations directly into his mind, collapsing tunnels, faceless screaming entities, an infinite void pressing down like the weight of a dying star. Every human, every alien, every creature in recorded history had broken under this assault. Cade closed his eyes and slept. 8 hours later, the AI blinked out error codes in panic. Red warnings cascaded down consoles. Subject, exhibiting neural stability. REM cycles detected. Subject, smiling. Outside the chamber, Commander Zyratha's 3 hearts skipped a beat. Impossible, he whispered, voice tight with disbelief. No human should survive this. No mind could endure 8 hours. A junior officer, already pale from the residual field outside the chamber, asked, Are they dreaming? Yes, said Zyrath, incredulous. And enjoying it. The chamber doors opened. Cade stepped out, hair mussed, uniform slightly wrinkled, and a faint smirk on his face. Well, that was fun. I'd say 10 out of 10 for ambience, maybe a 7 for noise reduction. Zyratha's eyes narrowed. This is unprecedented. Your neural pathways intact. You're immune? Cade chewed his gum thoughtfully. Not immune. Just really, really tired. And apparently the lullabies in there are fantastic for sleep. He stretched, cracking his neck. Seriously though, do you ever upgrade this thing, or are you stuck in the wheel fry them until they beg era? The aliens could not compute. They had measured strength in the ability to resist psychic torture. Every Vkrell officer, every elite soldier, every test subject had shattered. Yet here was a human cadet, mocking the machine, untouched, and apparently unconcerned with the galaxy's most feared device. What is happening? Zyrath demanded. Why does he laugh? Why does he sleep? The AI produced a cascade of reports, each line more absurd than the last. Neural integrity intact. Synaptic resilience beyond projected maximums. Emotional responses, incongruent with stress levels. Probability of imminent breakdown 0. The Council had convened on a single, terrifying conclusion. Humans were unlike anything the Vkrell had ever encountered. They could not be measured by conventional metrics. They were wild cards. Chaos incarnate. Dangerous. The decision was immediate. Cade would be tested further. If humans were this strange, they needed cataloging, studying, containment, if possible. Xyrath sent him to a demonstration, a combat simulation against the Empire's elite executioner drones, machines designed to anticipate neural and physical responses and exploit them with brutal efficiency. The drones waited, sleek and lethal, their adaptive weaponry humming like predatory beasts. Cade walked in, hands in pockets, whistling a tune from old Earth. He surveyed the mechanical predators, casually noting the timing of their movements. "Okay," he said, cracking his knuckles. "Let's dance." The drones lunged. Plasma whips arced through the air. Bladed arms swung in perfect synchronization, aiming for his joints, his head, his chest. Cade twisted, spun, rolled, ducked, each move improvised, instinctive, learned from simulators, old martial arts programs, and a ridiculous amount of human nerve. "You guys are predictable," he shouted, leaping over a drone as it struck the floor. "Try harder next time. Maybe throw in some actual surprise." By the end, 20 drones lay smoking, twisted, and non-functional. Cade had not even broken a sweat. The observers, senior officers of the Krell, had collapsed into stunned silence. They had expected a human to break. Instead, the human had turned every advantage of the Empire into a liability. You are not a soldier. You are a monster," Xyrath hissed, awe and fear coiling in his throat. Cade smirked, brushing dust off his uniform. "Monster? Nah. Just a kid who doesn't like losing." The Krell had underestimated humans in ways they couldn't even conceptualize. They assumed fear, pain, and psychological torment would bend them. What they hadn't considered was human audacity, the ability to endure, adapt, and mock the very instruments of terror. 8 hours in the chamber. 20 drones destroyed. Not a single scratch. Humanity in one cadet had just rewritten the galaxy's expectations. And the galaxy would never be the same. The council chambers were silent except for the low hum of failing consoles and the nervous shuffling of Grell officers. Xyrath's claws clicked against the polished obsidian floor as he paced, his 3 hearts hammering a staccato of fear and frustration. "We underestimated them," he hissed, voice tight with disbelief. "Every metric we had, every simulation, every assumption, wrong. The cadet, he survived the chamber. Not merely survived, he slept. He laughed. He mocked our instruments." A senior strategist, older than most of the Empire's fleets, lowered his mandibles and muttered, "It is not merely survival. He adapted. He learned the chamber. He weaponized it against us. We have never seen a mind work in such a way. Such audacity." Xyrath's eyes narrowed. "Audacity? This is not a cultural quirk. This is madness. He defies logic. Every step, every response, every reaction, it is impossible." Impossible, perhaps, for Krell. But for humans, impossibility was merely a suggestion. Orders were issued. Cade would face the Empire's ultimate combat trial. A room 3 kilometers long, filled with the elite executioner drones, each designed to predict and exploit neural and muscular responses within milliseconds. Every move measured, every weakness targeted. Any ordinary human would not survive 30 seconds. Cade had 8 hours in the chamber behind him. He was ready. He entered the simulation arena casually, swinging his arms, stretching, and muttering under his breath, "I hope they've upgraded from last season. I hate reruns." The drones activated, a dozen moving in perfect coordination, blades humming, plasma whips lashing through the air, neural sensors scanning for the slightest hesitation. The first drone struck. Cade ducked. He rolled forward, grabbing a falling piece of scrap metal and flipping it like a boomerang, smashing 2 drones in one shot. He ducked under a plasma whip, the air behind him sizzling and melting the floor. One drone lunged with a blade aimed at his shoulder. Cade caught the arm mid-swing, twisted, and sent the drone spinning into the arena wall. "Seriously, you guys practice this a lot?" he said aloud, brushing a smudge of sparks off his uniform. "Try harder." The drones adapted. They moved faster, predicting his motions, converging, trying to corner him. Cade leaped, somersaulted, vaulted off a rail, and landed on a drone's back, twisting it to the floor. He used the fallen drone as a shield against the others, spinning and smashing, every move improvised, every reaction instantaneous. Outside, Xyrath and the council watched in stunned silence. Instruments overloaded. Neural monitors caught fire. Impossible, Xyrath whispered again. He anticipates every action, every counter. The algorithms cannot compute him. The younger officers were pale, hands shaking. Commander, we're losing the drones, all of them are. Stop, Xyrath barked, but it was too late. The last drone collapsed, circuits fried, and sparks raining like fireworks. Cade stepped over the wreckage, breathing evenly, looking around like he had just finished a morning jog. Not a scratch. Not a bruise. Not even a hair out of place. Congratulations, Xyrath managed to choke out. You have destroyed our finest. Cade shrugged. Well, they were making it too easy. Honestly, a little suspense would have been nice. But hey, job done. The council convened immediately. We cannot allow this to continue, hissed the oldest strategist. The humans are unpredictable. They are beyond our models. We must escalate. Full psychological conditioning. Isolation arrays. Neural rewriting. Anything less and we risk annihilation. Xyrath felt the first seed of panic. You don't understand, he said, his voice low. They do not respond like any other species. Fear doesn't stop them. Pain doesn't stop them. Discomfort is irrelevant. They turn it into amusement, into strategy, into advantage. A young analyst, trembling, added, He laughs at death. And our machines. He learns faster than our AI can adapt. Cade, meanwhile, had been quietly observing. Every test, every simulation, every attempt to break him had been noted, catalogued, and remembered. Humans were not simply survivors. They were learners, improvisers, tacticians. And the galaxy had made the mistake of assuming their audacity was arrogance rather than calculation. When the next round of council-sanctioned psychological trials began, Cade's plan activated. He had subtly uploaded a virus into the torture resistance chamber's neural matrix while the drones were being decommissioned. The frequencies designed to induce pain were inverted, turned into lullabies, harmonies that resonated with human synapses in a strangely comforting way. The next wave of officers entered the chamber. Immediately, their instruments lit up, neural feedback loops overloaded. Filaments pulsed. Pain signals became rhythm, agony became melody. Krell officers collapsed to the floor, laughing, screaming, sobbing, not from torment, but from incomprehensible bafflement. Cade emerged again, brushing soot from his sleeves. Hey, he said, hands in pockets. This is almost pleasant. Better acoustics than the last setup, by the way. Someone take notes? Outside, Xyrath's voice shook. Impossible. We designed this to break them. To destroy them. And now, they are weaponizing it against us. Cade grinned. Yup. That's humans for you. Always thinking 2 steps ahead. Or 8 hours ahead. The council reeled. Their greatest instruments of terror had become absurdity generators. Their elite soldiers had fallen to a human who, by every measure, should have been destroyed, but instead had survived, adapted, and turned their own tools into his advantage. Xyrath could only whisper, almost to himself. This human, he cannot be predicted. He cannot be controlled. He cannot be stopped. And for the first time in recorded history, the Krell realized that survival alone was not what made humans dangerous. It was their audacity, their laughter in the face of annihilation, their capacity to see opportunity in despair, their ability to weaponize everything, including their own torment, against those who would crush them. Cade sat in a corner, arms crossed, watching the panicked officers. Next time, he muttered, try harder. Or, bring snacks. 8 hours is a long nap. He yawned, leaned back, and closed his eyes. The galaxy trembled quietly outside, unaware that the humans had already rewritten the rules of engagement. The council convened in emergency session, their chambers dim and heavy with the metallic tang of panic. The Krell had survived countless wars, faced predators that made stars seem tame, yet here they were, trembling, unable to comprehend a single human cadet. We underestimated them. Xyrath hissed, claws scraping the obsidian floor. Every simulation, every probability matrix, every psychological model, worthless. This human, he survived the chamber. He turned it into amusement. Into weaponized delight. The senior strategist, a brittle veteran whose shell had seen 40 campaigns, hissed through his mandibles. It is worse than that. He anticipates, he adapts, he laughs. Our greatest instruments, designed to break the mind, have become tools for the human. Tools for mockery. We are humiliated. Xyrath's claws clenched. Humiliation is tolerable. But we cannot allow this to continue. Full escalation. Neural rewriting arrays. Psychological conditioning. Isolation protocols. If we do not act, the humans will destroy us, interrupted the analyst's voice trembling. They already have. Their audacity alone has rewritten the rules of engagement. Meanwhile, Cade Malvin, 19, yawning as if he had just woken from an afternoon nap, was quietly reviewing every failed trial, every test, every strategy the Krell had thrown at him. Humans didn't merely survive, they learned, catalogued, and weaponized. What the Krell saw as terror, humans saw as opportunity. What they saw as impossible, humans treated as a puzzle. The next test was scheduled, a full-scale psychological assault, combining sensory overload, extreme isolation, and neural disruption. The chamber had been re-engineered with the Empire's latest technology, the kind that had broken half the Council's own officers. Cade walked in casually, swinging his arms, whistling an old Earth tune. "Hope you guys upgraded your playlist," he muttered. The moment the chamber activated, alarms blared. Neural stimulators, designed to pierce the soul, hummed with lethal intensity. Pain chemicals filled the air. Hallucinations projected impossibly grotesque imagery. Every human before him had broken within minutes. 8 hours later, the doors opened. Cade strolled out, brushing sparks off his uniform. "Better acoustics this time," he said. "Really helps with the nap." Inside, the Krell officers were convulsing, laughing, crying, shrieking, all at once. The AI's neural matrices were fried, unable to process the inversion Cade had installed. What should have been unbearable agony was now rhythmic, almost musical, a symphony of mockery that their minds could not decode. Xyrath staggered forward, disbelief etched into every feature. "Impossible. We designed this to destroy him. And now, we are being undone by it." Cade smirked. "Yup. That's humans for you. We don't just survive. We turn the tools meant to crush us into entertainment." The Council retreated into panic. Plans were made to quarantine him, to isolate humanity, to weaponize every fleet they could muster. But Cade had already anticipated this. Every strategy the Krell tried to deploy had been observed, logged, and adapted for countermeasures. The first escalation fleet arrived, 30 dreadnoughts bristling with weapons designed for planetary-level annihilation. Cade's ship, a single transport barely visible among the stars, sailed into their midst as if strolling down a boulevard. He deployed decoys, jamming signals, and projected holographic duplicates of himself across the fleet. Every dreadnought fired, every missile tracked, every laser focused, and every attack hit nothing but empty space. By the time the Krell realized what had happened, half their fleet had destroyed itself, mistaking decoys for targets, trapped in their own targeting algorithms. Cade's ship hovered, silent and unscathed, as the flagship's bridge erupted into chaos. Officers screamed orders that could not be executed. Systems melted under the strain. The humans were laughing. Always laughing. The Council reconvened in total crisis mode. "We cannot fight them conventionally," one officer whispered. "We cannot predict them. We cannot. Then we must change the battlefield, Zyra said. We must manipulate them, force them into a corner. We cannot let this, human, continue. Cade, however, had already turned the battlefield into his own experiment. He used the Vkrel's overconfidence against them, exploiting their every assumption. Where they expected fear, he delivered calm. Where they expected pain, he delivered misdirection. Where they expected surrender, he delivered audacity. One by one, their fleets fell into traps. Entire command structures were rendered useless. Communications networks overloaded. Drones designed to enforce loyalty malfunctioned. Cade's laughing voice echoed across the void. Guys, seriously, try reading the manual next time. You're skipping chapters. For the first time, the Vkrel realized humans were not just soldiers or warriors. They were architects of chaos. They could turn pain into strategy, terror into amusement, failure into opportunity. They didn't just fight, they redefined the very nature of conflict. And in the center of it all, Cade remained calm. He knew the galaxy had assumed humans were fragile, predictable, and containable. They had assumed he would break. Instead, he had slept, observed, adapted, and struck with surgical precision. Every assumption the Vkrel had made about strength, courage, and logic had been turned on its head. By the end of the escalation, entire sectors of Krell-controlled space were destabilized, fleets scattered, command hierarchies in chaos. The Council, once a symbol of unshakable power, was reduced to desperate whispers and panic-stricken arguments. Cade finally returned to Earth's orbit, stepping onto the observation deck of his flagship with that same casual air of a teenager entering a cafeteria. Well, he said, stretching. That was fun. Next time, maybe bring snacks. 8 hours of chaos really works up an appetite. And somewhere deep in the Vkrel Empire, officers whispered among themselves, fear trembling in their voices. We underestimated them. All of them. Every last human. They are beyond calculation, beyond control, beyond comprehension. Because humans did not merely survive. Humans adapted, innovated, and laughed. And laughter, when combined with genius and audacity, was a weapon sharper than any blade, faster than any fleet, and more devastating than any army. The galaxy would never forget the human cadet who had slept through torture, danced through death, and weaponized audacity itself. And the Vkrel would never again make the mistake of underestimating humanity. The galaxy trembled. Not with the fire of human fleets, though they were formidable. Not with the roar of weapons, though entire sectors had been decimated. It trembled because the impossible had happened. Humans had rewritten the rules of warfare, turned terror into strategy, and shattered the notion that any alien empire could predict or control them. Cade Malvern, 19 and impossibly casual, floated in the observation deck of his flagship, watching a projection of the Vkrel Council scrambling across the void. Entire fleets were immobilized by miscommunication, drones had turned on each other, and command protocols melted like ice in a supernova. He yawned, stretching as though it were just another morning. Honestly, he muttered, I'd give myself an A+ for style. Maybe a B for subtlety. The Council, once the unshakable backbone of the Zereth Empire, was now fractured, panicked, and utterly humiliated. Officers whispered, eyes darting, claws trembling. We cannot fight them conventionally. We cannot predict them. We cannot. One voice broke off, replaced by silence. They were realizing, collectively, that humans operated on a level beyond their models, beyond their instruments, beyond comprehension. Cade's methods had not been brute force alone. He had weaponized their arrogance, their hubris, and their assumptions. The torture resistance chamber had been designed to crush the mind. He had turned it into an instrument of mockery. Their fleets, trained for precision and order, had been lured into traps of improvisation, unpredictability, and human audacity. Every strategy the Vkrel believed infallible had been anticipated, inverted, and destroyed before it could even manifest. He had become more than a soldier, he was a symbol. A single human cadet had humiliated an empire, and the message was clear: underestimate humanity at your own peril. The High Council of Zerith convened in what little secrecy remained. The oldest strategist hissed, voice trembling with fury and fear. We cannot kill them. We cannot predict them. We cannot understand them. Every assumption we made about strength, survival, and logic, wrong. They are an entirely new class of threat. Zyrith, still trembling from 8 hours of psychological collapse, spat out a curse. They do not fear us. They do not obey logic. They adapt, they endure, and they mock us. Cade, observing from orbit, decided the time had come for the final lesson. He had already mapped their fleets, studied their protocols, and prepared a demonstration of human creativity that would leave the Krell trembling for cycles. He sent a single transmission to every major Krell command hub, a simple message, nothing more than a live feed of himself, standing atop the wreckage of their most advanced dreadnought. Behind him, human engineers and soldiers worked on repairs with casual efficiency, laughing as they recalibrated the alien war machines to serve human purposes. Greetings, Cade said, voice calm, eyes bright with amusement. You thought this would be a war of fear, of pain, of domination. You were wrong. We don't just survive. We adapt. We improvise. And we have a sense of humor. The transmission continued, showing fleets misaligned, entire command networks turned against themselves, and the remnants of their elite drones dancing uselessly in orbit. Every time you underestimated us, Cade continued, you trained us. Every trick, every trap, every impossible device you built, we learned it. We cataloged it. And now it works for us. The message was short, devastating, and elegant. The council watched, powerless, as Cade's grin lingered on every screen. For the first time, the Krell realized that humans were not just unpredictable, they were unstoppable. Not because of raw power, but because of the audacity to act outside expectation, the genius to exploit every weakness, and the unshakable nerve to mock annihilation itself. And yet Cade was not cruel. He had no desire to exterminate the Krell, no interest in endless conquest. The humans had demonstrated superiority without the need for total destruction. The galaxy was theirs to influence, to command respect, to rewrite the rules, but Cade allowed them the choice: submit, negotiate, or flee. Within hours, Zerith ambassadors arrived, their ships cautious, their weapons idle. They brought the language of diplomacy, terms, treaties, and concessions. Cade listened, arms crossed, foot tapping. He weighed every word, every phrase, the cadence of their fear and calculation. Then, with the same casual authority he had displayed in every impossible situation, he spoke. Peace, he said, simple and flat. But don't ever underestimate us again. The Krell nodded, trembling. Their empire, once the terror of the stars, had been humbled not through annihilation, but through the audacity, ingenuity, and pure nerve of humanity. They had learned, in the most terrifying way possible, that humans did not play by the rules of physics, strategy, or psychology. They made their own. And somewhere, deep in the Krell Empire, technicians whispered to each other, barely able to speak through fear. We cannot predict them. We cannot understand them. All of our measures, all of our weapons, all of our cunning, useless. They are beyond calculation. Cade leaned back in his chair aboard his flagship, staring at the void outside, and smiled. 8 hours of sleep, 8 hours of chaos, and an entire galaxy on notice. Humanity had survived torture, turned fleets into puzzles, and rewritten the definition of power. The galaxy would never be the same. Not because humans sought empire, not because they demanded obedience, but because they had proven that audacity, ingenuity, and nerve could topple gods, shatter empires, and leave legends in their wake. And Cade? He yawned, stretched, and muttered, next time, maybe I'll take a nap on their capital planet. They'll never see it coming. Somewhere deep in the stars, 3 Krell officers whispered again, terror trembling in their voices. We underestimated them. All of them. Every last human. And now, there is nothing we can do. Humanity, in the form of one cadet, had declared a simple truth to the galaxy: fear us, respect us, or be prepared to be outsmarted, and outlasted, at every turn. And somewhere, far beyond the Krell's comprehension, the human race laughed quietly, as they always had, while the universe learned, belatedly, what it meant to face them.